Good morning, first graders. So we are back for day 2 of our story, The Stone Garden. Today we're going to be working on some new skills, but we're also going to be thinking about that question about what happens when somebody has a new idea. So remember, it doesn't have to be brand new, but it can be a new idea of how to solve something or how to help us with something. So we could just come up with a new idea that might work better. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our street rhyme. So it says, we use it for facts we forget. We use it to locate a pet. To learn and get smarter would be even harder if not for the internet. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that a little bit this week. So when we think about this one, it says we use it for facts we forget. So sometimes when we forget something, we might look it up on the internet. We might look it up to see if we can figure out how to do that again. I have to tell you, with Taylor doing 6th grade, there has been times that I have gone to the internet to go, okay, I don't remember that. Let me look it up really quick. Okay, we use it to locate a pet, to learn and get smarter would be even harder if not for the internet. So I know that there's things that we do in our classroom that I use the internet for when we do all of our stuff in the reading program and in the math program. So sometimes I'm using the internet to help us with some of that stuff. Okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with our song. So we have our song, An Original Recipe. So we're going to go ahead and sing with that this morning, and then we will talk a little bit about our story. So remember, our words that were our amazing words was original, accomplished, and then doubt, which is down here somewhere. There we go, doubt. All right, so let's go ahead and sing this.
To accomplish a big goal, take 1 cup of hard work. Add an original thought or two. Stir the mixture, and when you are through, you just might come up with an answer to that worry or doubt. For in 1, 2, 3 easy steps, you can work things out.
Alrighty, so there's our song for this week. It's the last one, okay? But when we think about this one, okay, we can think about how can we accomplish something by making a new recipe or coming up with a new thing in that? Well, we can accomplish a lot of things. So we can be proud of ourselves for being able to create something that tastes really good. We can share that with others, and when we share that with others, we are hopefully making them happy and feel good because we're giving them something that we have created and then we're sharing it with them. Okay, so this week we have been talking about our amazing words. So if I'm going to show you our amazing words, yesterday we talked about accomplish, doubt, and original. Today, we're going to talk about glider, unmanned and manned, and then soar. So we're going to talk about the next 3 words in our amazing words. We're also going to not forget about our high frequency words. And then remember yesterday, we learned all about these prefixes, un and re. So our spelling words, if we would have been in school, would have been unhappy, refill, untie, undo, repay, unkind, undress, retell, reopen, and rewind. Okay, so those would have been our spelling words this week if we were doing spelling, but we're not. All right, so today we're going to listen for those words in our story, Orville and Wilbur Wright, Discover the Life of an Inventor. Okay. So it says, for thousands of years, people have watched birds and wanted to fly. Wilbur and Orville Wright learned how to do it. They built the first airplane with an engine. People had flown with hot air balloons and gliders before. The Wright brothers' machine did not need hot air or wind. Its engine kept it flying. So glider was one of the words I just asked you to listen for, and it was right on our first page. So glider is simply just a aircraft that uses wind. It does not have an engine, okay? So it's a glider that uses the wind, and it glides on the wind. So if it's not a real windy day, you wouldn't want to be up there in a glider, okay? So the glider stays up because of the wind. And remember, that was a word that was in black. So if I wanted to, if I didn't know what it meant, okay, I could go back to the glossary. Remember, we talked about this when we first looked at this book, that glossary has definitions. And it says, glider, an airplane without an engine that is kept up in the air by the wind, which is what we just talked about. Okay? We can always use that glossary if we're not sure. All right, here it says the Wrights learned to make things work. Wilbur Wright was born on April 16, 1867. His brother Orville was born on August 19, 1871. Their parents were Susan and Milton Wright. They lived in Dayton, Ohio. The boys thought their mother could fix anything that was broken. They watched her and learned how to take things apart. They liked to figure out how machines worked. So there's a picture of them with their family. But here it tells us that the Wright brothers learned to fix things by watching their mother. So a lot of times I think dads usually fix things, but sometimes those moms can do it too. So they learned from their mom. It says the brothers learned to make bicycles. In 1896, they opened the Wright Cycle Company. They made a bicycle called the Wright Special. They sold Wright Specials for $18 each. They wanted to make something new. Like many people in the late 1800s, they wanted to invent a flying machine. They watched birds and tried to understand flight. So here's their company, the Wright Cycle Company. The first gliders, so there's that word glider again. The Wright brothers built a glider. It flew like a kite. The brothers could watch it fly. They couldn't steer it, however. It crashed when they tried to make it turn. They invented a way of steering the glider. Their idea came from watching birds turn in flight. To turn the glider, the Wrights twisted the edge of the wings up or down. So we heard glider a lot in that one. Okay, because this is the first glider that they made, and you can tell here that he crashed on it. But they were able to use what they learned and work on other things. So it says in September 1900, the Wright brothers tested their new glider. They flew it at a windy spot near Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Wilbur piloted it for a few seconds. The rest of the time, the brothers flew it like a kite. Sometimes it soared and turned. Other times it crashed on the sand dunes. The Wright brothers returned to Ohio to make a better glider. So in our story we had the word soar. So it says soared in here. So it says sometimes it soared and turned. So if it's soaring, that means it is actually flying in the sky. A lot of times I think about a kite soars, okay? Or a bird would soar. So you see them just kind of gliding or soaring in the wind as they're kind of flying, which is kind of a cool thing to see. It says in July 1901, they came back to Kitty Hawk. Their new glider was stable enough to fly with a pilot. Wilbur glided over the beach for more than 300 feet. Then he tried to turn the glider. It stopped in the air and fell. The brothers kept trying. In 1902, they added a special tail to their glider. It kept the glider stable in the air during turns. So that back fin here is what kept it stable. Remember, we talked about that. Okay, and then remember they're laying down, which is kind of crazy to fly it. It says, making the flying machine. The Wrights were ready to make a flying machine. They built a plane with two sets of wings called a biplane. It had a gasoline engine on the lower wing. To steer it, the pilot had to lie down on the lower wing. The brothers named their invention the Flyer. So there that is with the engine. Wilbur won the coin toss to decide who would be the first pilot. On December 14, 1903, he took flight. The engine stalled. The plane fell to the ground after only 3 seconds. On December 17th, 1903, it was Orville's turn. He flew. He stayed in the air for 12 seconds. He flew farther than 100 feet. It was the first controlled flight in a plane with an engine. So although it stalled and it fell, remember when it stalls, it means the engine stopped running, okay? But it was still a flight. They were still up in the air. Okay, it says the Wright brothers kept making their airplanes better. Soon they could fly for hundreds of miles. In 1912, Wilbur died. 3 years later, Orville sold their airplane company. By the time he died in 1948, people could fly almost anywhere in the world. People can learn more about the Wrights at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and the Kill Devil Hills National Park in North Carolina. Okay, back here it says important dates to remember. So in 1867, it says Wilbur Wright was born on August 16th. In 1871, Orville Wright was born on August 19th. In 1896, they opened the Wright Cycle Company. In 1900, they tested an unmanned glider at Kitty Hawk. So there's that word unmanned. So if it's unmanned, it means there is no pilot. Okay, there's no pilot trying to fly it. There's nobody on the airplane to fly that, or the glider. Then in 1901, they tested a manned glider at Kitty Hawk. So there's that word manned, which means that they had somebody flying it. There was a pilot. Okay? Then in 1903, they first controlled flight by a pilot in a plane with an engine. Then in 1912, Wilbur Wright died on May 30th. And in 1948, Wilbur Wright died on January 30th. So this is kind of important dates to remember in their life and what they did to help us. Okay? Good. So today we're going to talk about a new skill, but we're going to kind of review our skills from yesterday. So yesterday, remember, we did our prefixes and we talked about the prefix un and the prefix re. So remember, the prefix un means the opposite of, or to take apart, depending on what it is. And then re means just to do it again. Okay, so you're going to do it again. So we had the word unwrap. So somebody had wrapped it and he did the opposite. He unwrapped it. Okay, unlock. So somebody locked the car and then somebody unlocked the car. They did the opposite of that. Okay, unfold and then untie. So we talked about those yesterday. Here we have replant. So that means that she had to replant this cactus. Maybe it's getting too big for the pot. Maybe the pot broke. I don't know. Okay, but she's replanting. Then we relock. Okay, refold, and then retie, like we talked about yesterday. So again, that's just doing it again. All right, today we're going to talk about the long O and the long I. And we're going to talk about things that usually have that ending to make those long, because in these words, excuse me, there is not any other vowel giving its voice, but it's still going to be a long O and a long I sound. Okay, so here we have this long O, like in the word gold. So gold is going to say O. Okay, so it's going to say its name. It's going to say that long O sound. Now, words that have OLD or OST generally have that long O sound. So we have a couple examples. I did gold, like they did. Then I made the word most, because in most you can hear that the O also says its name. And then hold. Okay, so again, generally if you see words that are ending in that OLD or OST, they're going to say the long O sound. Okay, same thing goes for our long I. So here, this is a child. Okay, so this is a child. So here, if you have a word that ends in ILD or IND, that is generally going to be a long I sound. So I give you a couple examples. So we had child, then I said wild, Okay, so we've talked about some wild animals at different times. And then kind. So we talk about being kind and being a bucket filler. Okay, so that's to be kind. So here you can see that ILD and that IND that is making it a long I sound. So today we're going to be working on that in both our decodable and in our phonics book. Okay, but before we go there, I want us to look in here, and there are a couple pink things in here that have that OLD and that IND. Okay, so way up here, you can see this little boy through an airplane, but he is going to fold an airplane. So you hear that fold says O, and it has that OLD ending. Okay, so we have fold up here. Now, when I look here, this is a light post. So post is also going to have that OST that's going to make that OST sound, that long O sound. Okay, over here, this little person is winding a toy or winds up the toy. Okay, so that has that IND that we wanted to talk about. So that wind. Okay, the other thing it talked about is this being a child. So this is probably this person's child. So child also has that ILD. Okay, and then I think when I look at this picture, I think all of these people are really being kind because they're helping one another to try and make this area a nicer place to be. So they're all being kind. So we have that IND as well. Okay, so what we're going to look at today is we're going to work on that OL, or that long O, and that long I with the different sounds of the OLD and the OST, and then the ILD and the IND. Okay, so we're going to work on this in your decodable. And I'm going to come down because it makes it easier. So this one says Old Joe. So right away in the title, I see that OLD by itself, but it's a word. So old. So I know that's a long O sound. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. So it says Old Joe, written by Trevor Stanton. Okay, down here, I'm going to come and highlight two things. So I'm going to highlight long O when it's just an O by itself, and then long I when it's just an I by itself. Okay, so I'm going to highlight both of those skills. So let's go ahead and read these long O words. So we have post, old, most, gold, hold, told, and cold. Okay, so you can see all of those words ended with either OLD or OST, which is going to show us that they're going to be that long O sound. Then we have some long I ones. So we have unwinds. I know that kind of looks like winds, and it can be both. So that's one of those words that wind or wind. You have to kind of look in the text to see what makes sense. But on here, unwinds wouldn't make sense. So this is unwinds. Then we have mild and wild. So we have that ILD and the INDS. That's going to say that long I sound. You have your high frequency words you can read with your parents. Okay? So this one's called Old Joe. Remember, I want you reading with me, and then we're going to highlight. So this one says, at the top of this road, at the top of a post, is the home of Old Joe and the things he loves most. So here we need post in the first sentence, as well as old and most. So that's all one sentence. So in all that whole sentence, we need post, old, and most. Okay. This page, it says, his nest made of straw is the color of gold, and he fills it with all the food it can hold. So in this one, I need gold and hold. So gold and hold. That's a pretty big nest, isn't it? Looks pretty big. Okay. All right, let's turn the page. This one says, Old Joe grabs a twig and unwinds a string, and he ties them together to make a nice swing. Wow. All right. So in this one, I need old for Old Joe and unwinds. So old and unwinds. Okay, this one says, he sings and caws with his voice that is mild. Then he flies in the sky on a ride that is wild. Sorry, guys. All right, so we need mild and we need wild. So mild and wild. So there's that ILD that's going to make it say its name. Okay. This one, it says, Old Joe has a coat that is black, I am told. He crows all day long on hot days or cold. So I need old, I need told, and then I need cold. So old, told, and cold. Okay. On this page it says, he does not undress when he's ready for bed. He just fluffs up his coat and tucks down his head. So I don't need anything on that page. Okay. On the last page it says, when you think of Old Joe, his nest swing and all, think of the fun things that you can recall. So the only thing I need there is old. All right. So we're going to read this together. Okay, so I'm going to put my highlighter away. We're going to just read this together. Remember, I want you reading with me. Okay, so I want you reading with me as we go through this. So this one says, Old Joe, written by Trevor Stanton. So it says, at the end of this road, at the top of a post, is the home of Old Joe and the things he loves most. His nest made of straw is the color of gold, and he fills it with all the food it can hold. So he's making sure that he's got some food in there. Okay, it says, Old Joe grabs a twig and unwinds a string, and he ties them together to make a nice swing. So when we see that, do we go, this is obviously not real, right? It's a wild bird, but I don't think that they make swings. All right, it says, he sings and caws with his voice that is mild. Then he flies in the sky on a ride that is wild. It says, Old Joe has a coat that is black, I am told. He crows all day long on hot days or cold. He does not undress when he's ready for bed. He just fluffs up his coat and tucks down his head. And back it says, when you think of Old Joe, his nest swing and all, think of the fun things that you can recall. So when we recall something, we just remember it and we think about that. Okay, so your job is to read that to your parents and talk to them about why did we highlight those words that we did. We highlighted them because they have that OLD or OST that makes the O say its name, or the ILD and the IND that also makes it say the I say its name. Okay, so here we're going to practice this in our phonics book. So I'm on page 589, okay, in my book. So here it says circle the word for each picture, and it gives us an example. This is a different kind of post than I talked about in our book. This is like the post office, okay, where we go take our mail. Then we have gold. Then we have rind, so the rind of the like watermelon or cantaloupe has a rind, any of those kinds of things. And then we have a wild animal. So here, we're going to look at the words and we're going to find out which one has either that long O or the long I that's going to go with that. So this is, they fold the napkin or the paper or whatever that is. Okay, so I'm going to circle fold. And it has that O-L-D. Okay, this one, this girl is being kind. So she's being kind to the dog. So we're going to circle kind. Okay, this is just a picture of a child. So our first word is the one that is going to say child. All right, so you're going to continue doing this for the rest of them. This is the most. This is cold, because we can't make a snowman when it's not cold. Then we have find. Then we have wind. And then we have old. This sweater is old. This one looks new. Okay, but we have old. Here it says circle the word to finish each sentence. So it says, I blank my baby sister a story. I told or I tied. Well, we know that's going to be told. So I told my baby sister a story. Okay, you're going to do the same thing for number 10. All right, go ahead and turn the page. So this page we're going to be doing 590. So we're going to be reviewing our prefixes. So here it says circle the word to finish each sentence and then write it on the line. So it says, will you blank my ribbon? Will you unkind or untie? Well, I know that's going to be untie. So I'm going to write circle untie, and then I'm going to write untie on the line. Okay. Number 2, it says she looks blank. She looks unhappy or repay. Well, she looks unhappy. So we're going to circle unhappy and write unhappy on the line. Okay, so then you're going to continue 3 through 10 and do the same thing. All right, so today we're going to look at our Grammar Jammer for the last time. Okay, so our Grammar Jammer today, we're going to be talking about prepositions and prepositional phrases. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working on today as we go through. But I'm going to show you our Grammar Jammer first, and then we will go back into our books. Okay, and then you'll have 2 more pages to do in your book today. All right, let me get this set so that you guys can see it. Let me get on my play button.
Peppy, peppy prepositions get around town, get around town. Peppy, peppy prepositions show the relationship between words in a sentence and a noun or pronoun. Words and a noun or pronoun. They are words you have heard many times before. Prepositions are hard to ignore. We use them among all the words you see. They're words like with, above, near and between. These very special words really get around town because they show the relationship between words in a sentence and a noun or pronoun. Those peppy, peppy prepositions get around town, get around town. Peppy, peppy prepositions show the relationship between words in a sentence and a noun or pronoun. Words and a noun or pronoun. Okay, get set. Here is your mission. See if you can spot the preposition. Are you ready? Let's go! The book fell behind the big bookcase. What do you think? Can you give it a try? That's right, the answer is behind. Okay, one more. Since you're a preposition pro, the little girl sang and danced throughout the show. Alright, you got it, so shout it out. That's right, the answer is throughout. Peppy, peppy prepositions get around town, get around town. Peppy, peppy prepositions show the relationship between words in a sentence and a noun or pronoun. Words and a noun or pronoun.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about prepositions and prepositional phrases. So if you go to page 591 in your book, it's right beside what we were just doing. All right, it says a preposition is the first word in a group of words called a prepositional phrase. So you guys found prepositions in the video. So that word behind and throughout were prepositions. Now, a prepositional phrase is the whole entire phrase that explains that. So a preposition, it says, Momoko sat on the steps. So on is my preposition, but on the steps is my prepositional phrase. So that's telling me actually where. Okay, so on the steps. Okay, so here it says circle the preposition in each sentence. Say a new sentence using each preposition. We don't need to say a new sentence, but we are going to circle the ones in the sentence. So it says Susie read a book about gardens. Okay, so Susie read a book about gardens. What would be my preposition? My preposition would be about. So I would circle the word about. Okay, so let's look at number 2. So number 2 says Susie wanted a garden in her yard. Okay, so Susie wanted a garden in her yard. So our preposition would be in. Okay, our prepositional phrase would be in her yard, because that's going to tell the whole place. Okay, it says she started working before school. So my preposition is before. My prepositional phrase would be before school. Okay, last one, it says she planted flowers after school. So after would be my preposition, and then after school would be my prepositional phrase. Okay, here it says write the prepositional phrase in the sentence. Say other prepositional phrases that could replace it. Okay, so it says I got a good idea in the morning. So what would be my prepositional phrase? The whole entire prepositional phrase would be in the morning. In would be my preposition. Okay, so we're just going to write in the morning down here, and you can copy it right from your book. So in, the, the, and then morning. morning. So in the morning is my prepositional phrase. All right, so what you're going to do is, if you will turn your page 4 pages of your book. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to come here, and it says, imagine you're helping build a garden. Write about what happens. Use prepositional phrases. So you're going to be thinking about when it's happening or where it's happening. So you could talk about in the garden. You could say after we planted the seeds, or after we waited a while. Okay, so there's prepositions that you can use. Okay, and you could tell me that before the plants came, we had to water our garden, okay, and make sure it had plenty of sunshine, okay? So there's lots of ways that you can go about that. But what I want you to do for me is I want you to imagine that you're helping build a garden. I have seen in some of your guys' videos to me, or in some of your pictures to me, that some of you are already starting gardens. I've seen some stuff started in your house maybe, and maybe you're going to move those outside. I know that's what we're doing down in our sunroom. We've got a bunch of plants started, and we're preparing our garden to go put stuff into it. Okay, so I want you to kind of think about that. How are you doing that? All right, so you're going to be doing for me today, you're going to finish up those 2 pages we started. So you're going to be finishing up page 589. You're going to do page 590, finish that one off. We did 591 together, so I don't need to see that one. I trust that you did it. And then you're going to do page 598, where you're writing about helping build a garden and trying to use those prepositional phrases. All right, so you guys are going to go do that for me. And if you haven't watched math, I'll see you in math. If you have watched math, then I hope you have a good day. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.